Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad you all were able to join us today. It is 2 o'clock right now, so I'm going to go ahead and start pulling all of us together and start getting this going. Go ahead and get my slides pulled up. So I know a few people will be coming straggling in. If there's any issues, we do have Kim from CYAN in the background as well to help with some of the technical difficulties. So thank you for that. Today we're going to be talking about innovative strategies for increasing smoke and tobacco-free policy compliance on college campuses. My name is Alex Bird. I am College Program Coordinator with California Youth Advocacy Network. Also included on this call today, we have Kimberly Pulver from CSU San Marcos. We also have Eliza Tong from UC Davis. So I'm very glad to have both of them on the call as well. Just a few housekeeping items as we're all getting started. I wanted to make sure that you all are aware you will be remaining muted throughout the webinar. Though we do encourage you, if you do have any questions, even if it is throughout the webinar, post them in the chat and the Q&A sections. And during the Q&A section at the very end of this webinar, I will be moderating some of those questions out, and we can discuss them at that point. So highly encouraged to make sure and include your questions in there. And one last point is to make sure there will be an evaluation at the tail end of this. So if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to complete that, it should just pop up in your web browser after the webinar closes. I want to start out with a little bit of an introduction as to why it is that we're all here. So why is it that we recommend having a smoke and tobacco-free policy, and what it is that we are doing with all of that. So there are five main reasons that we kind of have this as a best practice for a lot of our campuses, including the fact that having these smoke and tobacco-free policies on campuses save lives, and they reduce disparities. So they help to improve the environments for the at-risk populations and the minority populations on these campuses, which are often targeted by the tobacco industry and advertisements. They do improve the environment. So we see less waste on the campus. We see less use of these products. And we know that all kinds of tobacco waste, including vapes and electronic smoking devices, are harmful to the environment in many different ways. They also change social norms. So we know that in reality, 9 out of 10 students do not actually use any tobacco products. However, having things such as smoking areas or having a non-smoke-free campus can make it seem as though more people are using these tobacco products than are actually using them, making it seem as it is more the norm. So having these policies make it seem like it's more the norm to not use these products. And they also prepare students for the future. So whether or not they're coming from a community college, going to a UC or CSU, which are smoke tobacco free already, or if they're going directly into a workplace, a lot of these environments are smoke and tobacco free already. So having these campuses be smoke and tobacco free and having the environment be clean and safe for their learning really prepares them for the ability to improve their education moving forward. A little bit about what it looks like for how many campuses are involved. Our 2019 report card findings show that we've seen increases from 2008 till now, with 63% of campuses as of 2019 being smoke and tobacco free. So we will have some new numbers coming out. We actually have our 2020 report card coming out next week. So on June 1st, you can expect some new 2020 numbers. However, for this one, we are going to be focusing with the 2019 numbers. All of the UCs and CSU campuses are already smoke and tobacco free, with the University of California going smoke and tobacco free in 2014, and the California State Universities going in 2017, which means that all 10 UCs and all 23 CSUs are already smoke and tobacco free. As for community colleges, 52% of the California community colleges as of 2019 are smoke and tobacco free. And that number did rise, and we're excited about that as well. But that does give us some room to work, and that means that we are in a nice space where we can work with some of the campuses on improving their compliance, as well as some campuses to include new policies on their campuses. Some of the big movements for community colleges is that in 2018, the Chancellor of California Community Colleges actually passed a resolution supporting all of the California community colleges adopting 100% smoke and tobacco-free policy. And excitingly, in April of 2020, so just last month, we had the Student Senate for California community colleges pass a similar resolution that is also making it a legislative priority for students, for campuses to advocate for a smoke and tobacco-free policy on their community college campuses as well, meaning that we are encouraging all campuses to go on their own individual campus and district levels, smoke and tobacco-free. Today specifically, we're going to talk a little bit more about data collection and how that really helps with what it is that we're doing with keeping compliance. So data collection is valuable because it actually measures multiple point-in-time observations of an environment and a space or a group of individuals. It often guides how we work and the decision-making processes that we have, meaning that without data, we can't really know where we move forward. And so it is important for everything that we're doing. And it informs compliance. So it really helps with what it is that we need to be able to understand how to best make the policy work for our individual campuses. Specifically, what that means is policy compliance is important when you're measuring the pre and post survey information. So before you put in a policy, as well as throughout the time when you are implementing the policy and ongoing, just to see what is going on and how it is that we can continue to improve, which will get covered by Kim and Eliza later on. We also find that this data collection helps to locate hotspots and problem areas, helps us to improve and continually move our policies forward. And it helps us with the planning and strategizing for how to best fit our policies to our students and to our communities. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Kim to give you a lot more information as to how to collect this data and some about the tobacco trackers that she's been working with.
All right, thank you so much for that great introduction, Alex. So I'm going to be presenting on behalf of myself and Eliza, a joint project between CSU and UC, San Marcos and Davis, respectively. We were funded by TRDRP with a 2-year pilot in 2018. And so I'm going to be sharing with you, it's kind of the starting off with background context with compliance information at both of our universities, a tool that we developed to help provide a new way of engaging our campuses with helping us understand how well our policies are going in terms of compliance on our campuses, how we promoted our tobacco tracker. I'll share preliminary results with you from our tracker and what we've learned about our tracker users. So this picture shows something that probably many of us who work on college campuses, particularly those that are 100% smoke and tobacco free, see unfortunately all too much. So this really highlights the notion that smoke and tobacco free policies are necessary, but they're not sufficient. And so this leads us to say, what can we do to be able to come up with sort of new innovative approaches to boost culture change on our campuses, particularly when there aren't penalties in place for violators of the policy. So that was the inspiration for this joint project between UC Davis and CSU San Marcos. So Alex mentioned how doing pre and post surveys is a really excellent way to monitor how our policies are going. And so we did that with this project. What I'm going to share with you are results from both of our campuses in fall of 2018. And this data was considered baseline for our project. So what we did a campus-wide survey that was pushed out electronically to all active faculty, staff, and students on our campuses. We got a 20% response rate. And what we found was that 55% of our respondents reported seeing tobacco, smoking or vaping on campus in the past 30 days. 37% of them reported that they were exposed to secondhand smoke or vapor on campus in the past 30 days. They also, 79% of them said that they preferred 100% smoke and tobacco-free campus policy, and an overwhelming majority, 92%, correctly identified the campus policy. And so these findings highlight the big gap between knowing about a policy, supporting a policy, and policy compliance. So with this large group of people on campus, students, staff, faculty, who know about a smoke and tobacco-free policy and support it, what can we do to get them involved and to be helping hands to help monitor and survey what is going on with tobacco use, smoking and vaping on campus? That's the concept of crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing puts many hands to work collecting data. And Eliza has seen crowdsourcing work very well for an energy initiative at UC Davis. What I'm showing here is a UC Davis tool called Thermostat that was developed to identify comfort and energy issues on campus. And this was available to anyone on campus to be able to report where they were on campus and how comfortable they were in the space in terms of temperature. And so Eliza thought, why don't we create something like this to track tobacco, smoking, vaping, and litter on campuses. And so that's the concept that we developed as a grant proposal for TRDRP. Fortunately, we were funded to create and test this tobacco tracker that was inspired by Thermostat. So what I'm showing here is the tobacco tracker. This is the Cal State San Marcos version, and I'll share with you the UCD version in a bit. And so this, the tobacco tracker is set up for reporting tobacco-related litter, tobacco smoke or vaping. It also includes a way for people to report that things look good. So it's not a tool for only reporting problems, but it could also help set the tone for positive norms in terms of telling us where things are looking good. We frame the tracker as a tool for improving the environment rather than informing on people. That was something that was really important to our stakeholders. They didn't want to be seen as tattling on people or narking on people, but they do care a lot about the environment. And so we set up the framing in that way in terms of asking, what did you notice? And I'll also share with you in a bit the marketing for the tracker, which had an environmental frame. Our platform for this tracker is ArcGIS, and specifically this was built out using ESRI Survey 123. This is a web-driven platform, so we mindfully did not create an app because we thought that would create a barrier potentially for people to have to take the step to download an app. So they can access the tool directly through a website, and we had specific URLs for each campus. And then I'll share with you in a bit how we embedded this throughout our campus websites and our campus apps. We also encourage users to save the website to the home screen of their phones to give them easy access so that it would work a bit like an app in terms of it being on their devices. Now, ArcGIS is available free through the CSU, and we brought in a colleague through the IITS department who is an ArcGIS specialist, and he created the ESRI Survey 123 for us in data visualization platforms. And then he trained a student to help us with data cleaning. So I'll now share with you a bit some of the nuts and bolts of the tracker. So if someone made a report of litter from smoking or vaping, they would select from a menu with these realistic images of what exactly they saw. And their choices were cigarette butts, cigarette packaging, e-cigarette material, marijuana packaging, or other, and they could fill in for us what that other item was. And there was also a way for them to take a photo and upload it so that in our data repository, we would have not only the report, but also a photo was optional, just for litter. You know, if someone made a report of smoking or vaping, they could indicate whether that smoke or vapor was from a cigarette, e-cigarette or Juul, marijuana. They could say they don't know, and they could also fill in other. It wasn't possible for them to take and upload a photo because we didn't want to have photos of people and to have photos of violators specifically. And that was also feedback that we got from our stakeholders. And finally, they could report looks good, no smoking, vaping, or related litter. And then really importantly, we were able to geolocate where exactly these reports were. And so if someone was using this tracker from a computer, they would have a screen that looks like this, and they could drag the map to kind of get the pointer on the location where the smoking, vaping, or related litter was. If they were using the tracker from a mobile phone, their location services were automatically enabled, and then they could just press a button to pinpoint their location. And that gave us real-time, accurate, geocoded information on where smoking, vaping, and related litter were happening on our campuses. For our map-phobic folks like myself, we had a drop-down menu, and so people could just simply choose from a drop-down menu where they were on campus. So that was an alternative to the map. This is what the Breathe Free tracker, the UC Davis version of the tracker, looked like. And we did, UC Davis did start out with a different name for their tracker based on focus groups we did. We came up with the name Aggie Air early on, but then as time went on, we decided to transition the name to fit with what their existing campus program, which is Breathe Free, was. And so this got rebranded as the Breathe Free Tracker. And also borrowing from the success of Thermostat's cow mascot, they went with a squirrel mascot, Tracker the Squirrel, to kind of personify this initiative. And their tracker was enabled with 2 different campuses. So a user could make a report from either the UC Davis main campus or the UC Davis Health campus. And programming the map for any given campus was done by our ArcGIS specialist, and he pulls those maps off of Google. And this could be done for any location, any campus. And in kind of the back end of the programming, he kind of designed how specific, like he created skip patterns so that the questions and the maps would be relevant to the respective campus. The final questions that we included in the tracker were the primary role of the person on campus making the report. The choices included student, staff, faculty, visitor, and other. And I could share with you the stats on who our users were. 56% of our users were students. 39% of reports were made by staff. 3% reports were made by faculty. 1% by visitors, and 1% by other. And other tended to be classifications like administrator and things like that that were a bit more like staff and faculty. There was also a space for them to fill in additional information, and sometimes people did leave details about violators. And so we would from time to time get descriptions of people. Sometimes names were provided. but we didn't, directly ask people to identify violators, but that information was provided to us nonetheless sometimes. And we did include an opportunity drawing for a Starbucks gift card each week. And our main reason for providing an opportunity drawing was that we wanted to get contact information from our users so we could learn more about them, since this was a pilot and we wanted to get feedback. This was our vehicle for doing that. At the end, once someone submitted their report, they received this confirmation page. This is the version for Cal State San Marcos. UC Davis had their own version. So this as a program, this provides the opportunity to give feedback about your program and let your stakeholders know what you're doing with this information that they provide. So here's how we promoted our tracker at our campuses. We had a variety of promotional tools. Our primary one, and the one that seemed to work the best based on what feedback we've gotten from users in terms of how they found out about the tool and accessed it, was through our campus websites. And so UC Davis had theirs on their Breathe Free website, as well as on a tile on their overall My UC Davis website. And then Cal State San Marcos also had a tile or a space on our Clear the Air program website. We also incorporated the tracker on our respective campus apps. Although at both of our campuses, campus app hasn't been the leading way that our users have accessed the tracker. The leading way has been through our websites. We also had things like postcards and A-frames created. Here's an example of one of the posters that was done with UC Davis's early version of the tool that was called Aggie Air. At Cal State San Marcos, we created some signage specifically for the initiative. We created signs like this that we put on windows on the entrances to major doorways, window clings. And we also had ground decals that we put on the ground throughout major walkways on campus. And we included a website as well as a QR code. As I mentioned earlier, the websites have been the primary way that people have accessed the tool. Not many people have used QR codes. Here's some examples that show the environmental framing that we used in our promotion. We used these types of artworks in digital signage on campus on LCD screens, as well as through social media. And so you could see that, every campus has its own unique personality in terms of the environment. And so with San Diego being more of a beach town, we went with these images, pretty powerful images of the beach and the environmental impact. And at UC Davis, they love their cows. And so their framing was around protecting the animals on their campus. We also had swag that we distributed through tables on campus at events. A lot of these events were student-oriented, but some were staff and faculty-oriented, such as at employee wellness fairs or employee appreciation events. So let me pause here before diving into findings, and I'll just pause to see whether, I don't see the chat, but have there been questions, Alex, that have come in through the chat that would be helpful to answer now about the development of the tool or anything about the marketing?
None have actually come in yet, but I'll let you know if I see any.
Perfect.
And feel free to add comments in as we are going, if anyone is interested.
Okay. So now for the findings. So I said that, as I said, this grant was funded back in 2018, and we implemented the tracker in February of 2019 through February of 2020. So what I'm going to share with you is a year's worth of data. This captures 2 full semesters. So part of spring 2019, all of fall 2019 and then part of this past spring/winter quarter. And the summer is fairly quiet at both campuses. So even though this is a year's worth of time that the findings span, it's really, think about it in the academic sense of when we have a lot of people on campus. So it's really 2 full semesters. In that time, we received over 1,000 reports, and this is pooling the numbers between our campuses. So I'm not going to break it down per campus specifically, but I'm giving this to you overall. So we had 1,320 reports that came in. Only 52 of those were bogus reports. So we did get some, comments from people that we could tell were clearly not serious reports. Once we removed those bogus reports, we have 1,268 valid reports. And I'll share with you specifically what information came in. So as you recall, people can report either smoking or vaping, tobacco-related litter, or that things look good. So 52% of the reports that came in were of smoking or vaping. 29% were telling us that things look good, and 19% of the reports were of smoking or vaping-related litter. So I want to say something about this. So a tracker like this, the goal is for people on campus who care about the policy, which is the vast majority of them, to let us know, how are things going? What are you seeing? What are you noticing? So a tracker like this doesn't take the place, it doesn't replace an environmental scan or a campus-wide survey, but it does supplement it in letting us know on a day-to-day basis, where are the hotspots on campus? Where are the problems? Where do we need to focus our attention immediately? And so this doesn't mean that there's not more. These results here don't mean that there's not a lot of tobacco-related litter on campus. But what it does mean is that what perhaps is bothering people more, or what they're noticing more, is the smoking or vaping that they're taking the time to make a report on. So in terms of what smoking or vaping products were reported specifically, half of the reports were of cigarette smoking, 36% were of vaping, and 7% were of marijuana use. In terms of the smoking or vaping related litter, the vast majority, 80% of the reports, were of cigarette butts, cigarette packaging was 14%. A small proportion, 3%, was of vaping related litter, and a smaller proportion was of vaping or marijuana related litter. And this is something that we were looking at really closely, particularly after data that we've seen out of UC San Francisco with looking at vaping related litter at high schools, where they have found a lot of Juul pods. We didn't necessarily get that same information from our data collection at Davis and at San Marcos, but keep in mind this is from crowdsourcing. So I can tell you that at both of our campuses, we've also done environmental scans during the same study period. And what is reported to us through crowdsourcing is, lining up with the environmental scans, where cigarette butts are the most common thing that our trained environmental scanners were finding. So I would say this is something that we want to keep watching. And so, we're very pleased that we have an infrastructure with a tracker that gives us a way to be able to collect data and know what kind of vaping or smoking litter people are seeing. But it's something I will want to keep watching, certainly. And I wouldn't conclude from this that vaping related litter is not a problem on campuses, but cigarette butts are being reported much more frequently. This shows you the GIS portion of the reports, and this is what makes the tracker so powerful. Is this analytic structure that lets us know exactly where the reports are coming from. So this is showing UC Davis main campus. The red dots indicate a report of smoke or vapor. The green dots are a report of looks good. And the black dots are a report of litter from smoking or vaping. And then the user can click into any of these dots to get a detailed report that tells what the report was, what the source was. So this was a smoke or vapor report. Cigarette was the reported product. And this is the date and the time stamp and the specific area of the report. There is more information beneath all of this in the database, but we limited for like live public viewing what would show. So if someone did make a comment with someone's name, we have that in our database, but we blocked that from showing up in this report, which we made available publicly on our websites. Here's an example of a litter from smoking or vaping report here in the black. And this one said that that type of litter was a cigarette butt, and it gives us the date and the timestamp and the specific location. And what we were able to do was then build out those types of maps into density maps or density plots that allowed us to look at how hotspots were changing over time and areas that needed immediate attention. So I'm going to show you a series from Cal State San Marcos. This was done in spring 2019. And you can see that the darker areas are the areas of greater density. So we had quite a number of hotspots at that time. This is before we implemented the tracker at our campuses. Then in fall of 2019, that's when our tracker became available on our campuses. And you can see that in that period of time, the hotspots changed. And so we have less areas of density. And then when we did our last measurement in spring of 2020, we only have a little bit of data from spring of 2020 before we shut down for COVID. But you can see significant change over time. For example, in the previous semester, lots B and C had been a medium level hotspot. And as of spring 2020, we didn't have any reports of smoking, vaping, or related litter in lots B and C. But we did see that there was a move. Lot F, which had been a medium area hotspot, became a higher intensity hotspot. And so this was able to be used within our programs to let us know, where do we need to send ambassadors on a week-to-week basis? Where do we need signage? So it gave us some really nice information about, sort of how we could boost compliance efforts in specific locations, and also gives us a big picture in terms of trends over time. I want to end my portion of the presentation letting you know what we've learned about people who've used the tracker. So we did reach out to people who, over the year of our intervention, provided contact information through the opportunity drawing. We emailed them and asked them to complete a short survey to give us some feedback and insight about the tracker. And so we have a total of 316 tracker users who provided us information and answers to these questions. And again, I'm not separating between our campuses here, but this is giving you the information overall. So in terms of what motivates people to use the tobacco tracker, the top reason was that a clean environment was important to them. So 80% of our users told us that, and that matched nicely with what we had learned when we were developing the tracker during focus groups, that seemed to be the primary thing that people cared about. That's the way we promoted the tracker through framing, and that all vetted out through the end. The second reason, 68% of our users said that they use the tracker because secondhand smoke or vapor is harmful. So that gives us some ideas about marketing that we might do in the future in terms of doing messaging around that. 67% said they use the tracker because they support a smoke and tobacco-free policy. Half of them felt that campus policy should be followed. 44% were concerned about the norm that smoking and vaping on campuses creates. 35% were motivated for the opportunity drawing or to win a gift card. 32% said that smoking and vaping does not fit the campus image. We also asked our tracker users what they would like to see happen after they make a report. The top reason was 77% of them said they would like to see the litter cleaned up. So that is also fitting with this whole, the environment is important to people. And so I would say with that, we want to stick with that environmental framing. And it's also important to let our tracker users know that we do take action on the reports and that we do put cleanup efforts into the areas when they tell us there's a problem. 43% of them said they'd like to see a violator assigned community service. 38% would like to see violators fined. 27% would like to see violators assigned diversion training. 23% would like to see new signage installed. 17% said they'd like to see a violator sanctioned, and 10% said other. Some of the other suggestions included a written warning, providing violators resources and counseling on ways to quit, calling violators' parents, and officially monitoring the location. So a lot of these desired consequences dovetail nicely into interventions that CYAN has for colleges. And so with that, I'll thank our team of researchers at UC Davis and at Cal State San Marcos, and all of our contributors who are listed here. And again, thank our funder, TRDRP. And then I'll turn it back to Alex to talk about interventions to help be used in connection with what we can learn with crowdsourcing.
Perfect. Thank you, Kim. And thank you for all of that wonderful information. So what I would like to wrap this up with before we jump into some Q&A is mostly just some of the resources that CYAN actually has available for all of you to kind of think about for your policy implementation, compliance, and even stuff for adoption. All of the resources that I'm about to mention, all these different tools for compliance, can be found on the college website for CYAN, which is catobacco-freecolleges.org. We'll make it's a very intuitive website, can help you from everything from the adoption process, adoption, implementation, compliance. There's information for quitting resources, and there's always new information popping up on there, as well as our newsletter if you ever wanted to sign up for that. Some of our primary resources I want to mention that relate to this conversation we're having today includes our policy integration guide, which is from policy to practice. It helps with embedding policy throughout the campus, including reaching out to staff and faculty. And this guide specifically goes and helps walk through the different steps of how to engage all the different groups on your campus, including your police force and your staff, faculty, your students, ambassadors, everything like that, just how to get the policy to really engage your campus. The second one is about signage, so signage guide. And this is more than just talking about those metal signs, the smoke tobacco free campuses and such. This is ways to explain your policy and reach individuals with movable signs, style guides, and just creative ways to really engage students and engage the style that your campus is already putting in place to make them want to pay attention and make them want to follow along with what it is that's going on. And the third one is our ambassador toolkit. So this is how to engage your students, so student coalitions and just groups on campus, to get them to be able to help you make this policy happen in your community, on your campus. They're the ones who are able to go and actually go out to those hotspots. They can help with the promotion, and they can really just get those voices being heard, which is important because a lot of times students prefer to have that peer-to-peer conversation. So all these different guides are available on our website for download in digital form. We also have a bunch of other resources, and we're always available for assistance if you need us. Info CYANonline.org. And you can definitely reach out to us and get information for help as well. So with that, I do want to jump into some time with Q&A just to make sure that we have the ability to actually talk with our speakers. So I'm going to actually have to close off my chat to be able to get. All right, perfect. So we actually do have our first question already popping up, and it is from Sherry Miller, which is, have any high schools used this app?
Not that I'm aware of. So I think that so far only UC Davis and Cal State San Marcos are the only schools at this point that have developed a tracker like this. We're just now getting the word out about it. So I hope that as the public learns about it, that more schools, including high schools and other universities, will think about adopting a tool like this.
Sherry responds with, I'm on it. So I encourage everyone else who has anything that they would like to know about this. This is our time where we have some available Q&A time. We have both Kim and Eliza on the call available to answer questions for anyone who has them.
And there's another question in the chat box for Kim. Kim, it says you framed an environmental monitoring, you framed the message as environmental monitoring to avoid policing behavior. The commenter is curious if there's any conflict that happened during reporting.
That's a really good question. No, there hasn't been any conflict. So it does provide an anonymous and subtle way for people to make reports, and so I think that's one of the attractive things to people, is that we have so many people on our campuses that care about the policy and want to do something to support it, but they're not comfortable approaching a violator. And so this gives them a way to reach out to the smoke and tobacco free programmers, program people directly, and let us know. And that allows us to deploy resources to those areas, whether it's sending an ambassador, putting in a sign, whatever it may be, could be tailored to the capacity of each school in terms of how they can respond to a report. But it does take the pressure off of people on campus from approaching a violator themselves, and gives them a way to be able to do something to support the policy. And it gives us data that we desperately need to know what's happening on our campuses. And so there were no problems that we heard about, or any concerns about that. But good question.
This is Eliza. Can I give an example from UC Davis? And Kim, chime in if my memory fails me. But I know one report we got through the portal for UC Davis was someone was very concerned about their roommate vaping at very high levels. And so I guess, obviously that student may or may not have confronted their roommate. So at least we were able to then contact the student affairs or housing folks to try to reach out to that individual. So there's potential for maybe people who don't feel comfortable addressing something that's very uncomfortable for them, and you know, whether or not they know them or not.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say we don't want the tracker to replace people educating a violator directly if they're comfortable doing so. And we hope that having a tracker will raise visibility of the policy even more and do things to support and activate the social norm to discourage folks from smoking and vaping on campuses. But yeah, it definitely provides like probably a new avenue that wasn't there before to be able to give information to people on campus, authorities on campus, who might be able to then act on behalf of the person making a report if they're not comfortable or able to talk to the violator directly.
Thank you. And we actually had another question come in that what type of bogus report examples do you have?
Oh, that's a good one. So things like charred animal flesh, barbecue meat. So they were things that were really clearly, I think, someone that was kind of messing with us or not taking the tool at its face value for what it was intended for.
Hi, everyone. This is Kim from CYAN, and I just wanted to add some background to this research project that Eliza and Kim have been working on, and something that we're really grateful for this from our team. So one of the things that CYAN's been trying to do for the last 5 to 6 years is work with campuses to do pre and post data collection before policies are implemented and afterwards. And part of this is to show how well policies are working and to identify where there are problems with policies so that we can strengthen compliance efforts, which we've spent a lot of time focusing on. But it also goes to show about impact of policy. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we have, and Alex shared this at the beginning of the webinar, about how when we do policy right, this is on college campuses and off colleges and our communities, we know that these policies have a great public health impact, but we can only measure the success of the policies and the impact of the policies if the policies are working. And so we have to have data to show whether or not there is compliance. And so that's something that's really exciting about this tool, is that it's easy to use, it's friendly for the student population to be able to use it. And then it allows for the utilization of other compliance strategies. And then it just helps with the burden of campuses to try to get that data. I would say that's probably the #1 challenge we've had with collecting pre and post data, is it's just a lot of burden on college campuses and on the staff, since the majority of people who work on smoke and tobacco-free policies are all volunteer students, all volunteer staff who are doing 100 other things. And so adding on pretty robust data collection is a lot to ask them. So that's something that we're excited about. We would love to see this implemented. And I think the question from Sherry about whether or not this is used on high school campuses, this could also be something that could be modeled after to track what vaping looks like on our campuses once schools are back in session. So I just wanted to recognize the geniusness of Eliza and for Kim for sharing this tool and for creating this tool, because I think that once it's been tested and it becomes available and we can utilize it, I think it can be an amazing resource to use outside of the college campus, but definitely for those of us who have been working on smoke and tobacco-free campuses for many years.
Yes, thank you. And we have to say, I'm thankful for CYAN for bringing Eliza and I and me together to do this project. So CYAN has been our collaborator and our consultant on this. And it is definitely our vision for this tracker to get used in a variety of settings, to bring it next to community colleges, high schools, behavioral health settings, really any type of campus setting is one that could benefit from something like this.
Yes, and thank you so much for all of this hard work. We definitely, like, students getting to actually get engaged and involved is one of the best ways to actually get some of this movement going. And we do actually have another question that ended up popping up. So is it known or worth studying if sharing results with campus audiences helps with compliance?
Ooh, that's a great question. That closing the feedback loop is something we talked about a lot during our project, and we do think it's important. I don't know the research on it off the top of my head, but we believe that it is. What we've heard from folks anecdotally, they want to know, what are you doing with this information? And it does seem like it's reinforcing to them from a behavioral perspective to know that there's some action taken that would lead to a positive reinforcement to them saying, oh, you know, I reported something, they did something about it, so this works. I'm going to continue to make reports. So we do believe that's very important. And I think the research would back that up. And so that is the next step that we have planned for this line of research. We have a grant proposal submitted to TRDRP now that's pending to help us dive deeper into the what's next. So once reports are made, what gets done with that information? And part of our proposal was to include a regular feedback loop of giving information and sort of feedback back to the campus community, because we do suspect that that's very important.
And I just want to note quickly as well that one of the things that we hear, and actually one reason that many times campuses act to change their policies to go smoke and tobacco free, oftentimes campuses, we always talk about how California was the first state for many of our campuses to test out all the different policies that are out there. So we've had crazy policies. We still have some in California about, you know, designated areas and parking lots only certain parking lots, all of these different things. And what we have found is that oftentimes students get really frustrated with the lack of enforcement of the policies, and they question what's the purpose of having the policies. And so they go to the administration and say, you know, why do you have these policies if you're not going to enforce them, if you're not going to do anything about them? And so by having this type of data and by sharing the data with the administrators, it's showing this problem still exists, and your leadership decided to change a policy, usually through shared governance. And so you need to make sure that the policy works. But it also gives students something that they can do. It gives them an opportunity to take action, to share their concerns, to share their thoughts. And then I think that the next step of being able to take all of that data from the advocate's perspective and share it with the administration, and then be able to hold the administration accountable for that. And so the follow-up question was, well, giving this information to campus administration, does that change behavior? That's our hope. So our hope is that when we have the data to show where tobacco use is still a problem, then we can heighten compliance interventions such as having ambassador programs or better signage, increase tobacco treatment services. And then once that gets there, our hope is that students will decrease their tobacco use on campus, the norm around tobacco use shifts, and then that will motivate quit attempts. And so that is what we have seen off of campus and just in public health and communities, that we know when you change where people can use tobacco, it changes the frequency that we see young people using the product. And then their norm shifts, not as many people are using tobacco anymore. And so then young people either don't start using or they're motivated to quit. And so this is something that we obviously are now seeing again with vaping, with teens specifically, that teens are seeing their peers vape on campus. They think everybody vapes, therefore it's become normalized, therefore they're more likely to start using it. So we have to shift that norm. And by tracking the problem on campus, having that data and being able to strengthen compliance interventions, the hope is then it shifts the norm back to tobacco use just isn't done, and therefore students don't start or they quit.
Thank you for that one. And There was one last follow-up question, which I think kind of ties in with what you were saying of the would including smokers learning what other people see and think about it. Was so I'm assuming that was referencing specifically getting the information directly to the students if that would make the difference in some of their smoking behaviors. And I think that kind of ties in with what Kim was saying of the like reducing the social norms of like what the students see is what they're more likely to replicate.
Mhm.
So I encourage if anyone else has any more questions to add them in. I don't know if Kim Vagadori, if you have any more on your chat stream either.
Nothing on this end.
All right. Then if no one else has anything specific to add, I do want to specifically thank Kim Pulvers and Eliza Tong for doing all the work with this project, with coming up with these this tracking system and coming up with a way that campuses can actually use their own environment and like actually find what's going on their campus and really move forward with the different work and impact the policies themselves. So thank you both for the work that you've been doing and everything that you've done so far. Is there anything else you'd like to plug before we sign off this webinar?
No, we just really appreciate you providing this venue for us as an alternate to the Joining Forces conference. We're really happy to be able to present today, and so thankful for all of your support with our policies over the years.
And I just have one last thing to share. Alex briefly mentioned this a little bit earlier, that we have seen a slight increase in smoke and tobacco-free campus policies here in California. You all will see that increase on Monday. We're excited to be releasing our 2020 Smoke and Tobacco-Free College and University Campus Report Card. So watch your email boxes on Monday for the new report that has all the data on our smoke and tobacco-free policies on college campuses here in the state.
And please don't forget to complete the evaluation as you sign off. It should pop up directly in your browser. And if you do have any follow-up questions, do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we can definitely take care of that. And there was one last question of if they will be receiving this recording of this webinar via email. I believe so, correct?
Yes, so it usually takes the WebEx system about 24 hours to get the recording to us. Once we do that, we will have the link on CYAN's website, cyanonline.org. If you go to events and trainings, you can look at all of our archived webinars from the last year, and that link will be at the top of the one in the college column. We also have a YouTube page where we post all of our webinars, our past webinar recordings that you can follow, and you'll get that link through the website as well.
Well, thank you everyone for your time, and we will all talk to you again sometime soon, and continue to stay safe and enjoy the rest of your week.